They went down the way people go looking for answers. Quiet, patient, with machines that listen where humans cannot. The descent was a thin, steady light through a vault of blue. The wreck resolved itself slowly, a cathedral of buckled steel and barnacled ornament. For decades, the Titanic had offered its famous rooms and famous ghosts. What this team found was smaller in number but larger in story. A sealed hold tucked behind collapsed decking, and inside it, arranged with a care that suggested private intent, a clutch of animal figures carved from pure gold. Lions, elephants, a massive stag, a bear caught mid-roar, each almost life-size and luminous even beneath a century of salt. The first frame of video that reached the surface lab made everyone stop. In the glow of the ROV's beam, the statues read less like treasure and more like a private menagerie, their surfaces pitted with time yet unmistakably cast and chased. Around them lay the kinds of small things that prove human presence. Frayed rope, a length of canvas once used to wrap objects, a stamped crate corner bearing a merchant's mark. A ledger entry found later in archival hunts bore a terse notation, "Private Consignment, J.M. Carrington," and the pieces began to take shape as the possessions of a well-connected American trader who shipped goods for display, diplomacy, or investment, but who apparently wanted this collection moved quietly across the Atlantic. The discovery was not dramatic so much as surreal. These were not the small statuettes people imagine when they think of recovered treasure. These were ambitious commissions. The musculature of an elephant rendered in gold, its trunk curled protectively, a lion with a mane worked into waves like an artist's signature, a stag whose antlers swooped into decorative filigree. The patina was green in the shadows, the gilding dulled where marine growth had taken hold, but the forms read instantly as objects made to be seen and to confer, meaning a show of cosmopolitan taste, a portable statement of wealth and power. Working with wrecks is an exercise in restraint. The team's first priority was documentation. The ROV took high-resolution panoramas, while laser scanners mapped every centimeter of the hold. Scientists and conservators hovered over the feeds, annotating marks, noting the positions of marine life that had made the statues home. Only after exhaustive recording did the debate begin. Retrieve and risk disturbing a grave, leave and lose potentially invaluable cultural history, or find a middle way by lifting small sections for study while digitally preserving the rest. The question would turn into months of consultation with descendant communities, maritime authorities, and museum ethicists. When the decision was made to bring a single statue to the surface for study, the operation was conducted with the intensity of a surgical theater. Soft slings cradled the figure. Ascent rates were carefully controlled to mimic the slow pressure changes the object had known, minimizing stress on delicate gilding. In the lab, the statue arrived as if awakening from sleep, a mass of metal beneath droplets of dark water, its silhouette still eloquent beneath the crust of concretion. Conservators spoke in hushed tones as they began desalination. Water baths, slow exchanges, microscopic cleaning, the work of coaxing back surface detail without erasing the history, written into every pitted mark. Analyses followed. X-ray fluorescence and metallurgical assays revealed a surprising economy. The figures were not solid blocks of the purest carat gold some headlines promised, but complex alloys and gilding techniques typical of the late 19th century. An inner core of a base metal, plated and worked by skilled hands to present the appearance of opulence. It was, in other words, a sophisticated trick of material and craft, showy yet practical, made to glimmer and to withstand travel. On one statue, a tiny hallmark identified a New York foundry known to cater to wealthy clients. A smudge of foreign. Pollen trapped in a crevice pointed to a shipment route that likely crossed ports in Europe and the Americas. The divers had their own encounters with meaning. Returning to the hold multiple times, they found that life had taken the statues into its fold. Anemones clung within hollowed eyes, brittle stars threaded their arms through undercut bases, and a shy fish nested beneath a raised paw. Once, as an ROV's light swept across a lion's flank, a school of tiny creatures stirred like a living shadow, and then receded as if acknowledging trespass. The team adapted. They conducted retrievals with an eye toward minimizing ecological disruption, cataloging species before removing any material, and coordinating with marine biologists to study the emergent reef ecology. The human story, when layered over the science, proved complicated. Archival researchers dug into shipping manifests and private correspondence. A half-burned cigar tin, a steward's note, and a scribbled port instruction all pointed to a merchant whose taste was theatrical and whose transactions operated in the grey between commerce and convivial secrecy. Descendants contacted the project, some eager for repatriation, others wary of publicity, and their voices shaped public interpretation. Museums drafting exhibit plans were urged to frame the objects, not as trophies but as testimonies, to present provenance, to contextualize wealth, and to include the full ethical conversation about recovery from a site that also holds human remains. That ethical conversation was raw. The Titanic is a grave. The hold that sheltered gilded animals also sheltered the dead in a much larger sense. Critics charged that any recovery risked turning mourning into spectacle. Project leaders responded by insisting on transparency and partnership. Recovery plans, legal agreements, technical documentation, and public access to research results. When items were displayed, they would be accompanied by testimony from historians, conservators, community representatives, and marine scientists. A chorus of voices that refused to let the objects hang in a vacuum of glamour. There was, too, an unexpected cultural conversation about symbolism. Why animals? Scholars suggested several possibilities. The statues might be diplomatic gifts intended for a museum or a private estate. They might have been commissions for a public exhibition that never happened, or they could have been speculative commodities. Commodities that carried the aura of classical culture to customers in a growing American market. The animal forms carried potent meanings, strength, nobility, exoticism, that said as much about the merchant's self-fashioning as about the objects themselves. In short, the treasure was not only gold but a language of status that could be read across continents.